All right. Oh, what's that? All right. You're watching Co-op for Two. My name is Jesse Reichor. You're joining me for a Saturday afternoon sort of unannounced live stream. It's February 21, 2026. You're going to be playing session 5 of Unboxed, the board game themed puzzle game. Quite a unique take on puzzle games, and one that's definitely captured my interest. YouTube says 11 concurrent viewers, 3 likes. Normally we might play this on our Sunday afternoon streams, but we've caught up with the Deadbolt Mystery Society Letters from a Ghost Hunter series, so we're going to stick with playing that on Sundays, and then we'll interleave some more games of Unboxed through the weeks. Now, I am going away from February 27 to March 6th for a week sometime in there, so I won't be doing anything that weekend, but we'll try to do some extra streams leading up to it. I've got my coffee. I hope everyone is having a good weekend. I think the trip, I am really not the kind. There are people who love going on vacations, on trips away from home. Not me. I'd rather sit at home in peace and quiet in front of the computer, so I can feel there's a little baseline of just anxiety of being taken away from home. Those of you that, I think there are those of us who carry around a sort of baseline of, I don't know if you'd call it, but sort of like high-strung anxiety stuff, social anxiety. When you're young, you pretend you don't have it, and then you get older, you sort of start to say, oh, this is who I am. But anyway, so like it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong. But so I don't know if it sounds weird when I say that, but I guess those of you who know, who can sympathize, understand. The rest of you just have to imagine it. Now, anything we should talk about before we get started here playing Unboxed? Tomorrow we will be playing Deadbolt Mystery Society Letters from a Ghost Hunter. at our normal time. And then on Monday, probably late at night, we'll be playing another game of Etherfields, a campaign surrealistic board game with some narrative that we've been playing and enjoying. I've been working the last week on the yellow pages of New York Noir. If anyone has an artistic background, maybe some familiarity with Photoshop or one of the other editing tools, and wants to help out making some fictional yellow page ads, I've made a post on Board Game Geek in the New York Noir section. You might check that out. Otherwise, I guess we'll get started here. So, 10 sites, 10 little scenario games in this box, and we're up to number 5 today. General rules, we don't need that. Here's how we've done so far. We got a perfect score, I think, on mission 1. Site 2, we had to take some hints, but we decided it's okay to take hints. Site 3, perfect, no hints. Site 4, perfect, no hints. So we have not made a single mistake. The worst thing we've done is had to take some hints, which I think is fine. I wouldn't view taking hints as bad in this game. What's the game behind to your left? To my left. The one straight behind me here is Dragon Eclipse, sent to me by a viewer, Stacy. The one right here is Storyfold, a little story-based solo game that I picked up. Plenty of playthroughs on YouTube of that already. And then we've got a couple of independent mystery cold case games that we need to get to. And then far here is Kinfire Chronicles, a campaign game that Greg and I just put up our final thoughts on after a couple months of play. All right. So we're up to Dig Site 5. If you haven't watched the previous scenarios, that's okay. These are all independent, but I happen to think this game, Unboxed, is one of these jewels, one of these special games that make a great gift. It's very affordable. So if you think you might want to buy this, play it yourself with your own group, you should stop watching. You can only play each of these scenarios once. Go play it yourself, and then you can come back and see how we did on our playthrough. All right, let's look at the setup for today's site. It's called March of the Gods. The dig site here appears to be an antechamber of a grand temple, so right before you get into the temple. From the looks of it, a ritual procession took place, and it seems that those who brought unique gifts for the gods were at the head of the line. All right, so 4 colors, and it looks like only 4 tokens of each color. So to remind you, the way that we've been playing is that we're treating it sort of like a campaign. We get 1 free hint per game that carries over. These are the relics. So we're going to give ourselves another relic, so we could take full 3 hints here without paying any penalty cost. The other reminder that you need to know is that we're trying to figure out rules to board games. All of the board games are competitive board games that we're trying to figure out. So that's important when you try to figure things out. And the components available are precisely those listed. So we have 4 of each color. So far for every game, these have been player tokens. And then we need the C deck of cards, which I don't think we've encountered before. So that was B. We did that in a previous game. Now the C cards. See what those are. Do we know how many? Wouldn't have killed them to tell us how many are in this stack. Are these C cards? No. Ah, okay. There's our C cards, just 3. Okay. So I've got 3 C cards, nothing on the back. We should confirm. Well, I guess I did confirm that there are only 3. Maybe they are showing us that there are 3. I just don't want to make a mistake, because if you don't have all the cards, that could kill you. All right, and then there are hints sometimes in the title and in the description. A ritual procession took place. It seems that those who brought unique gifts for the gods were at the head of the line. Unique gifts, okay. There's our 3 C cards. All right, and here are the questions we have to answer. What does the initial setup look like? What are players doing each round? How do players gain progress? How do players lose progress? Why was this game likely not meant for 2 people? How is a winner determined? All right, well, everything here is on these cards. So this number is just for putting this back together. So these look like the rules, and this looks like the board. In fact, it looks like there's a piece missing. Maybe we need to go back and look for another C card, because it sure looks like there should be one more card. I do think this is a small oversight in the design of this game. It would have been very nice for them on this little sheet to be like 3 or 2 to tell you how many cards, because this sure looks like there should be 3 cards and I don't see it. You don't think, well, these are different size. Oh, we do. I see. It's part of this one. I see. Okay. Thank you. The chat was trying to help me. All right. So there's our board. Procession. We've got sun, moon. All right. So what's happened here? So it also said, it gave us a little hint about not being for 2 players. All right, let's take a look. What have we got here? So it's just a sun and a moon, and then identical symbols going up. It's a procession. Those who brought unique gifts for the gods were at the head of the line. So, I mean, this seems like people reveal, but both of the examples here have the same number of things in each hand. That's a little odd. Is this saying you move up 1 space, and is this saying you move up 2 spaces? It almost feels like everyone starts here, and then you move up a number of spaces based on what? Wow, this feels like we've got very little, we've been given very little information here. Okay, let's think it through. Clearly, you're revealing tokens from your hand. You're revealing tokens from your hand. Now, is this going to be our first case where the tokens aren't player tokens, where everyone can choose from one of 4 colors. 4 players, everyone gets one of each color. Boy, it really feels like we don't have enough information to figure this out here, just as an instinct, as a gut instinct. We don't have... Is this showing us 2 different hands, or is this showing us 4 players? These players are going up 2 spaces. These players going up 1 space. Why would that be? Is there any other information that we might be missing here? These are all the same symbols. Certainly looks like a track going to the head of the line. Those who brought unique gifts for the gods were at the head of the line. Problem is, we really can't see what tokens are in their hands. This may be a case where we have to take some hints, but let me see if the chat has got any theories here. The red legs on the top people are backwards. That is a very good observation. That is a very clever observation. Why are the legs red and backwards? Okay, I love it. That is a brilliant observation. So let's think. Is this saying that this is the penalty? Like, you showed 2 and they're the same as someone else. 2 are the same as someone else. So you go backwards 1 space. 3 are the same as someone else. You go backwards 2 spaces. Is that what's happening? So you put as many tokens as you want in your hand of different color, or maybe they're not different color. Maybe you're just deciding how many to put in your hand. You reveal, if you put the same number as someone else, you go backwards depending on how many. So if you share 3 with, if 2 people did 3, you'd go back 2 spaces if someone else did a 3. If no one did, if you have also put 2 just like someone else, you go back 1 space. But why is there not a 4? Maybe you're not allowed to do 4. Doesn't really seem like a game, does it? Okay, I do like this idea, though, that this is penalty for showing the same count as someone else. So you put 1, 2, or 3 tokens in your hand. If you put 1 token, you must go forward 1. Or you don't go at all. If you have 3 tokens and someone else also has 3 tokens, you both go back 2 spaces. If you have 2 tokens and someone else has 2 tokens, you go back 1 space. So let's just look at this here. How do players progress? How do they gain? So this is you're moving forward, you're moving back. Is it that everyone gets one of each color, though? And you're just counting for how many colors are the same, or just count? It looks like probably count. This is maybe our biggest clue. Like, why does the game not work with 2 players? Why does the game not work with 2 players? Like, our basic proposal that you hold out your hand, and if you share the same count as someone, you go back. Why would that not work with 2 players? There has to be something that doesn't work with 2 players. What works with 3 players but doesn't work with 2? We're going backwards if you show the same count as someone. Does it have to do with even and odd? So if there are an even number of people with your number, then you go backwards, and an odd number, you go forwards. But then it's only showing us 2 examples. But then you would have a case where you could never have an even number of people. Never have an odd number. If it was a 2-player game, you would never have a situation where an odd number of people duplicated you. But there are no rules for that. Let's see. Here's my guess. The unique comment in the description, along with the backward red feet, imply you lose progress if you tie with someone. Being more stones, going back more, yes. You guess a secret number between 1 and 3, you get to move that distance. If you show the same number as someone else, you get to move 1 less. Or maybe move backwards instead as a punishment. If 2 or more, move back 2. Move as many spaces as unique token, move backwards. I think showing a 1 is a guaranteed move forward, even if more players show 1. You can gamble and try 2 and 3. That's everything that we've been saying. Okay, now let's see. Now we're getting to the... Everything there seems reasonable, if a little milquetoast. But now here we're getting to the discussion about the 3-player game. Nelson says, if you're 2 players, you always play 3. You always play 3. Because the punishment for playing 3 is moved back 2. I'm not sure I see why you would always do that. Let's keep reading. I think the 4th token is used to position your player on the board. That makes sense. I agree with Nelbor. 1 token to place on the board, 3 tokens to gamble with. All right, so let's assume that that's our basic rule. You get your color. Everyone gets their color. You put one on the board here, maybe. And you have to move up or down and move down. Okay. So everyone goes, reveals a number of tokens in their hand secretly. If you've got the same number of tokens in your hand as someone else, if you're not unique, you're going to go backwards. You'll go backwards 2 if you show 3 tokens, and go backwards 1 if you show 2 tokens. If you just show 1 token, it's a guaranteed move forward. And if you have unique, you'd move forward that number. So if you showed 3 and no one else showed 3, you'd move forward 3 spaces. If you showed 2 and no one else showed 2, you'd move forward 2 spaces. If you show 1, you always go forward 1. Now, that is a baseline gambling rule. Now, why would that not work for a 2-player game? Let me think. The channel has a theory about that, but let me think. 2 players, you each start out, you each have up to 3. Okay, so you both show 3. You both go backwards 2. So that's not a guaranteed move. It would be, oh, that's why. That's why it can't work as a 2-player game. Because if you show 3, you go backwards. That's horrible. But if you show 1, the person who showed 3 goes ahead. So in other words, it's a tie. Your worst case, if you show 3, is a tie. No one can get ahead of you if you show 3. That's why. No one can get ahead of you if you show 3. If you decide to show 3, the worst thing that can happen to you is someone also shows 3, and then you both don't move. Whereas if your opponent showed 2, you would go ahead 3, they would go ahead 2, and if they showed 1, you'd go ahead 3, they'd go ahead 1. So that's why it can't be a 2-player game, because it's always beneficial to show 3 and then hope that the other player doesn't. But if you're playing a 3-player game, then the safe player who shows 1 can beat out the other 2 players who show 3. All right, so it sounds like maybe we've got it here. If you play with 2 players and you don't play 3, but your opponent does, he gets ahead. And if you play 3, yeah. Okay, so yes, and once you got ahead 1 space, you could never be beaten by showing 3. All right. So do we understand this fully now? Let's take a look at the questions. What does the initial setup look like? Okay, what we think is that each player starts their token probably on the sun. I mean, it did talk about a progression forward. And the course of the sun is usually it rises and sets. So you might, I think if you had to guess, you'd say everyone starts out with their token here and moves up. And the winner is the first person who gets here. What do players do on each round? They take a number of their tokens from 1 to 3, put it in their hand, and all reveal. You gain progress by having a unique number of tokens in your hand, or 1. So you basically go ahead, you go back, you go backwards the number of tokens If you have the same number of tokens as someone, you go backwards however many minus 1. So if you have 3 tokens, you go backwards 2. If you have 2 tokens, you go backwards 1. If you don't have a shared count, then you move forward that number of tokens that you put in your hand. So you're pushing your luck, trying to move forward as many as possible. And that's how you gain progress if you have a unique number of tokens in your hand, or if you only have one. If you have one, it's a guaranteed single move forward. Or I guess you could imagine a scenario where you always start here and you can only go backwards. You never advance. But that doesn't really make sense, because then you would always show 1 and you'd stay there. All right, so you're moving upwards. Now, it's not meant for 2 players, because at 2 players, there's a known best strategy. And then a winner is determined by the first person that gets to the top. Why do we think you go forward 3 when you uniquely play 3? It seems to me from the instructions that you go forward 2 if you uniquely play 3, and 1 if you uniquely play 2. Rob says that would make playing 1 the same as 2. Why ever play 2? Or do you mean you would move 0? This is a good question. Why do we think you move forward 3 when you play 3? Could it just be... No, it has to be... There has to be a reason you would take the risk of playing 3. That's an interesting question, though. So we're saying if no one also shows 3 and you played 3, you'd move ahead 3. And Valley is saying why maybe it's just a generic rule. If you show a unique number in your hand of 3 or 2, then you move ahead only 1 spot. Could that be... No, because that makes playing... Well, it makes playing 3 very risky, so then you should play 2. Because the worst case scenario is just that you move backwards 1. But then, if people are assuming that, you'd be better off playing 3. So I think that could work. And then Valley says, in fact, I'm not even sure about playing 1, you always move 1. Well, there has to be a way to move forward, but you think you move forward just by dint of playing a unique 2 or 3? It seems to me if you could only play 2 or 3, that's a little rough. Now, here's another question. Maybe it doesn't really make sense to start at the bottom. Doesn't it make a little more sense that you would start in the middle so that you can go backwards? You would think there'd have to be some incentive for playing 3 since the penalty is so high. But you would still have a game if the rewards were the same for playing 3 or 2, but the punishments were asymmetric, because then you'd be outthinking the people and saying, well, most people would be scared to play 3, so I'll play 3. Annika and Rob both think that you should be starting at the sun or the moon. Annika says, I would think there'd be some kind of separate indication to start in the middle. I think you're right. I think you're right that there is no indication, but isn't it odd that the thing that moves you backwards can't trigger? Or vice versa? Maybe this plays to what Valley was saying. Maybe you can never move forward. Maybe you only move back. Is that possible? That everyone starts here and you're just trying to survive? No, because this game says the questions are, how do you gain progress? How do you lose progress? So it has to be that you're going from one end to the other. Just seems logical that you should not start at one extreme, to me, so that you have a place to go backwards. This game could go on for a little while. Valley says, I don't think you only move back. I just think it's the same amount moving forwards as backwards. So you play 3, you go ahead 2. You think that's what this half black, half red means? Like, you either go this way or go this way. You either go forward or back. There a way in which only options are to play 2 or 3? Just throwing things out there. I haven't fully thought it out. The thing says if you play unique, you move to the head of the line, not you move forward. We're at the head of the line. That would explain why there is no mention of one token. I don't see what you're saying. That there's, oh, you're saying, what if the rules were you could only play 2 or 3? I think if you play unique, you move to the front of the line. If you tie, you drop back. That's an interesting theory, but then what happens if 2 people play unique? It feels to me like we just haven't been told what happens if you're not unique. We have to sort of infer what would be the good game rule. I still think the leapfrogging doesn't really make sense. But do we really think that you can never show 1? Because to move forward 1 space, you have to play 2. To move forward 2 spaces, you have to play 3. You can never play 1, huh? It's a little weird. I mean, you're using 1 for your token color, and that gives you 3 remaining. What if, okay, I got an alternative theory to you. I got an alternative, no, that doesn't work. I was thinking maybe you put a color at the bottom and at the top, and where they meet is your score. But that doesn't make sense because you wouldn't have 3 tokens to bet. If you can't play 1, what's the point of the 3 stones? If 2 or 3 is the same as 1 or 2, you might as well give 1 less stone. I think that's a great observation. Like, why? Why go through the trouble of saying 3 minus 1 is 2? Just give 1 and 2 stones. I think that's a great point. The only reason to go through this weird thing where you go backwards 2 if you play 3 stones and backwards 1 if you play 2 stones is if there's a reason to play 1 stone. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. All right, I think we need to read some of the hints. All right, so we're getting 3 hints for free and 6 questions. So let's decide which hints seem most important for us. I would say the initial setup is not 100% clear to me, so that's a valid one to ask about. What do players do? I think we understand that idea relatively well. Gain progress. Okay, so I guess gain progress, there's still some debate on. I think we understand the 2-player problem. I think the winner is going to be determined by the gain progress answer. So I guess if I had to rank these, what I'd like hints for most, it would be how do players gain progress would be my number 1 question. And then maybe initial setup. Start with those 2. How do they gain progress and what is initial setup? 46 and 2. Okay, I think we're in agreement on that. Okay. There's always a clever little deduction that gets made in this game. And today so far has been, well, maybe we've had a couple, but this point about if you can't play 1, what's the point? I think that's a great observation. And Rob says, I think the rules always say they're 4-player games. Is that right? Let's get some clarification on that because that would be useful. I know it says they're competitive games. 10 different dig site. They're games for 2 to 4 players. Competitive games 2 to 4. So they're not always 4-player games. Okay, that's fine. Let's read our hint. So we're reading our first hint. We're paying 1 of our relics. 1 of our 3 built up relics. We're losing that to read hint 46. So I will now read it. Cut the front of this book without you seeing it because you'll see too many others. All right, 46. How do players gain progress? The hint is being unique has its perks. Okay, not much help there. Being unique has its perks. Okay, but clearly you move ahead if you're unique. But do you move ahead if you're unique and if you show 1? Is that our thought? I think if you show 1, you just don't move forward. If you show 1 and someone else shows 1, might you just stand still? Wouldn't that be the logical pattern here? If we show 1 and we're unique, we move forward 1. But if we show 1 and we're not unique, do you think you just stand still? How would we decide between those? How would we decide between those 2 potential rules? If you show 1 and you're not unique, I think maybe you don't move forward. I think maybe if you're unique, you move forward the number of spaces Guess we have a little bit of a debate. One is a guaranteed move forward, says Rob. If you don't move forward when showing one, then it's pointless and not a choice. I don't think I agree with that. If one has to be unique, wouldn't that be in the rules? Why just show 2 and 3? I mean, I think there's a point in that, but if you don't move forward when showing one, it's pointless and not a choice. That's not true, is it? Let's think about this for a second. I'm claiming that a possible interpretation of the rules is if you're not unique and you show one, if 2 people show one, I'm claiming that maybe the rule is you don't move at all. You don't move backwards, but you don't move forwards. Now you tell me why that's not a valid rule. So if you show one and no one else shows one, you move forward one. But if you show one and someone else shows one, the 2 of you don't move forward at all. Why is that not a valid rule? I'm not saying now one is more plausible than the other. I'm just trying to understand if you think there's a reason why that wouldn't make a valid game. You'd still be incentivized to show one if you thought everyone else was going to show higher. I only meant showing unique one, not moving forward. Yeah, I agree with that. If you show a unique one, you move forward. The question is, if it's not unique, do you not move forward? Or is it a guaranteed move forward? Feels to me like you might be better off. Well, you can't always do anything, because then if your players adapt to you, they'll get ahead of you. So Dispaminite thinks that it's not the case that one is a guaranteed move forward. It has to be unique to move forward. Okay, I guess I would be inclined to that. All right, let's look up the setup rule. The setup hint. We're going to pay our second hint for the setup rule, number 2. It says, racers take your positions. Racers take your positions. All right, well, that makes it a little more interesting. That seems to suggest that this is a track like this. Could it be saying we start somehow on the track and have to make a loop? No, surely not. I mean, does look like a racetrack, and in a racetrack you have to go around. But where would you start? Where is the starting line? That's a weird clue. That is a weird clue. Starting line could be here. Could be consistent with my theory that you could go backwards. But then why would be night to day? That doesn't really make sense. Wow, that hint did not help. Except that it's saying it's a race to the finish. So the first one who gets to the top surely wins. Huh. I don't love that you can't. Well, maybe it's okay that you can't go backwards past 0. All right, I think we should use up our last free hint and then decide if we want to pay points for hints. We looked up the setup. We looked for gaining progress. Lose progress is surely just going to tell us that if you've got the same number of cards. I feel like we can guess what the answers to all the what the subtle little hints for the rest of these are, that it's unlikely to get us any more information. I suppose we could look at how a winner is determined to get a little more clue as to the nature of the race. Valley says she wants to read the hint for 93, and Despaminite also wants to read the hint for 93. Okay, let's do it. Let's pay for our last free hint, 93. 93 is the hint for what are players doing each round. We think it's just putting a secret number in your a secret 1, 2, or 3 tokens in your hand. I think the odds of this being useful hint are very slim. Everybody has a secret is the hint. Yeah, so that was not helpful. Okay, I think this is one of these things we've decided on this game that we would rather read all the hints than get a question dead wrong and make it useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay for, we've gotten 3 hints for free. I think we're going to pay for the other 3 hints. So let us go ahead and pay for this next one. And I'm going to read the hint for the how is a winner determined, 79. I guess we got to put this in front of us. So we're getting -1 point. And I'm reading the hint for 79. A winner is determined. Looking down upon others is a timeless tradition of mankind. All right, so that just sounds like whoever reaches the top first looks down on the people that they beat. So bottom to top, which is what we guessed. We've already gotten -1 point. Now let's see, do we want another hint for a minus point? You guys think we don't need any more hints, huh? Okay, we don't think 2 players, and lose progress. If you're not unique, you lose progress. So I don't think we're going to get any more hints. All right, so we're going to have to now come up with our final rule set. Okay, let's get it out. The initial setup is everyone puts their token on the sun at the start of the race. What are players doing in each round? They are secretly putting 1, 2, or 3 tokens in their hand, and then they are simultaneously revealing them. How do they gain progress? They gain progress if they have a unique number of tokens in their hand. They lose progress if they share the same number of tokens in their hand as another player. If they have the same number of tokens as another player and they showed 3, they would go back 2. If they have the same number of tokens, if someone else has 2 tokens in their hand, they would go back 1. If they have 1 token in their hand and someone also has a 1 token, they don't move at all. And if they have a unique number, they go forward that number of spaces. So if they have 3 unique, they would go ahead. Sorry, we think, it's always minus. No, it's always the number. So we think if you show 3 unique, this is what I think. This is the part we're arguing about. If you show 3 and no one else shows 3, well, you should go ahead 3. And that's the part worth talking about. So if you show 1 and it's unique, surely you have to go ahead 1. So it can't be this minus 1. So if you show 1, you go ahead 1. If you show 2 unique, you go ahead 2 unique. And if you show 3 unique, you go ahead 3. Now you could make a rule. You could still play this game and say, no matter if you show unique, you just move ahead 1 space. That would still be a game, but I think it would be a much less interesting game because the fun of these push your luck games and bluffing and secret reveal games is that you can take a long shot and try to catch up and try to risk it all. So I think to make a fun game, you'd be better off saying that it's very tempting to try 3 and get ahead 3, and then the greedy get punished for going for 3. So I don't think you want to, I don't think it would be as fun. It would still be a game, but I don't think it would be as fun a game is if the goal is just to be unique. And then you would just move ahead 1, because then moving it, make 2 or 1 would all be the same. If you only move 1 place, you should always play 1. No, I don't think that's right. But you're right that the penalties go higher for the more tokens, so it should be the reverse. But I don't think it's true that if you only move 1 place, you should play 1. Because you still would have to, even if the rule was you only move ahead 1 space, it's true that betting 3 carries a bigger risk. But if everyone tries to play it safe and play 1, then one player who plays 2 would win the game. So you can't, it still would be a game, but the incentives are slightly off. Okay. Why is the game not meant for 2 players? And the reason is another little interesting game element, because if there were just 2 players, you would always be better off showing 3 tokens, because the worst that can happen to you is you don't move and the opponent doesn't move, so you stay tied. And the best that can happen is that they pay less than 3 and then you get ahead of them, and once you get ahead of them, there's no losing. Rob says, I think 1s are a guaranteed move. I don't know how we differentiate those 2 scenarios. I think that's one of these cases where it's ambiguous. You could make the case that there's no rule telling you, but I'm just going to, I think either one could be the rule, but if you were trying to make a good game, I think it would be more, would it be more enjoyable that 1 is a guaranteed forward move? It almost would be more enjoyable that 1 is a guaranteed forward move, but I think the logic of being unique would mean you don't move ahead if you show 1. Okay, anyway, how is the winner determined? It's the first person that gets to the moon. The reason I think you don't get a guaranteed 1 is because it specifically says unique move ahead. Well, this is just a hint here, but it seems those who brought unique gifts were at the head of the line. Okay, let us read our solution then. Here we go. Anyone want to disagree with any of this? We've got -1 point. Okay, so we took, this is site 5, site 4, site 5. Site 5, we're playing on 2/21/25. It's taken us about 1 hour. And we took 4 hints, 3 free, and -1 extra. All right, let's see if we're right. Let's actually get everyone on record making this guess. Does it have to be, does the single token have to be unique to move you forward? If the rule is to move forward when playing unique, then one tide is not a move. Okay, it sounds like most of us think even with playing one token, it has to be unique to move forward. Does anyone else want to disagree? Rob is saying, Rob, you think you don't move forward, and so you're doing this. The thing is, this doesn't say anything. This feels like it's just penalty. This doesn't really say how you move forward at all. Valley says, I'm still not sure about the moving forward the amount and backwards the amount -1. Am I alone in thinking ones are free? Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I do think if I had to guess, I would guess you have to be unique in the ones as well. But I still think you'd have a reasonable game if the ones don't have to be unique. I just don't think there's a penalty. Okay, here we go. Let's get our things so we can read this one at one line at a time. All right, here we go. What does the initial setup look like? We said you all start at the bottom on the sun. Assemble the track where the card with the sun is on the bottom, the card with 5 spaces in the middle, the moon at the top. Each player takes 4 discs of the same color. Players then place one of their discs on the sun space at the bottom of the track. Okay, so far we've got question 1 right, question 2 right. So that's our first +3 points. Initial setup. I guess both of these together are worth +3 points. All right. What are players doing each round? Players are secretly placing 1 to 3 discs in the palm of their hand. All players then reveal their choice simultaneously. Okay, so our second question. Kind of weird, isn't it, that there's 2 parts to this, but really question 1 was what does initial setup look like? We got +3 points. Question 2, what are players doing? We got that right, so we got 3 points. Okay, how do players gain progress? If a player reveals a number of discs in their hand that no other player reveals, that same number, the player moves up that many spaces. So we were right. You move up that number of spaces that you showed in your hand. If no one else has it, has to be unique even for the 1 disc. All right, so +3 points. Those of you who thought the 1 was an automatic move, you don't quite get that full points. How do players lose progress? If multiple players reveal 1 disc, none of them advance at all. That was our guess. That was our shakiest guess. If multiple players reveal 2 discs, they all go back 1 space. If multiple players reveal 3 discs, they all go back 2 spaces. That was our guess. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3. That's question 4. We also got perfectly right. Why was the game not likely meant for 2 players? If only 2 players were comparing how many discs, they would both only ever choose 3 because the person that didn't do so would always be behind. A draw is the only strategic outcome. All right, so that question we also got perfectly right. I think this was the most interesting little puzzle to solve. How is a winner determined? The first player to reach the moon space wins the game. Okay, so we got another perfect score minus the extra hint we took. 1, 2, 3. So we had 6 questions. 3 points for each is 18 minus 1 is a score of 17. Can we get the confetti if we have a perfect score? I think that's a good idea. All right. Well done by the group. That was a nice team effort and another satisfying game. There is a little bit of a fun element to this game where you can solve most of it deductively, and then there's always seems to be a little element of the rules that is ambiguous and could go either way, and you just kind of have to use your best game experience intuition for what would make a more enjoyable game. All right, that was pretty fun. Now, I'm going to give you a choice here. There are 16 concurrent viewers, says YouTube. So now we're down to 15. I don't normally do this, but let me ask, does the group want to play a second site number 6? Or should we stop here and play this in more bite-sized chunks? What do we think? Logic says, not logic, what's the right word for that? What's the word for like wisdom and sensibility tells us that we should play one at a time. But I'm giving you the option here whether we should play site number 6. Remember, this is finite. Once we finish this, it's all done. So should we savor it or should we play site 6? Let's have a vote. All right. So type vote site 6 or vote stop. This is where we find out how many people are actually watching and participating. All right, 2 votes for site 6. Alexander says 6. You got to type vote at the start of your sentence to be counted in the vote. Where is my... Is this the one that... Where's the view where we get to see what people are saying? I guess it's this view. Nelson says we have other games in the queue. Vote site 6. Okay, that's 4 votes for site 6. Liza also. No votes for stopping. Annika also votes for site 6. Nelson votes for site 6. What does Dispaminite say? I'm not regretting I asked. First of all, I don't feel bound to any of these votes. But just think of these as polling, public polling. They're not I'm not committing to a democracy here, but it looks like the group wants to play site 6. All right, let's clear this vote. We're going to take an 8-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll play site 6. We are back. It's Saturday afternoon. We've decided to play a double header of Unboxed. So we're going to play Site 6 now, having finished Site 1. I did want to say, although I called out especially the person who figured out the two-player thing, but there were a bunch. This was real teamwork in this game. The idea, the person who spotted the backwards legs on that symbol, that was key. The 2 versus 3 tokens. This is a fun group to play this game with. And then lastly, to follow up before we start the next site, the word I was thinking of earlier about having the wisdom to stop and not play another game was prudence. Prudence is the good conservative judgment and wisdom, but we are throwing prudence and caution to the wind, and we're going to play Site 6. Hopefully they will make more of these boxes. All right, let's read the rules here. Site 6 is called The Seven Princes. Are you ready for story time? Carved into the stonework at this dig site, we can see a classic parable, more of a moral lesson than a historical recording. A rich king has sent his 7 sons to seek their fortune and can only be at peace once they all have claimed their place in the world. So it looks like we're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 8 tokens. 7 princes. 7 tokens of each color. Then we have the B deck and the R4 card. Okay. Let us get that stuff ready. Okay, so there are 8 tokens of each color, but we're taking 7 of each. So that definitely feels like 7 princes. So each player has a token for each prince. Okay. And then we need the B cards. Now this may be our first time we've had a reused deck, because we saw this deck in a previous game, the B deck, and now we are using it again. It's bound to happen. But we also need the R4 large card, which tends to be a rule card. And sure enough, look at this. Okay. Double-sided. Okay, we got our hands full this time. All right. Let's look at our questions. What does the initial setup look like? What are all the things a player can do during their turn? Does the game support both orthogonal and diagonal play? What's the main restriction during gameplay? What do players do at the end of their turn? How does the main form of player interaction work? And when is a winner determined? Okay, and we get one, the way we're playing the game is we get one free relic per site. So there's our free hint. All right, now let me remind you what the B deck looks like. Each card has 2 animals on it, and each animal has a color. So I think we said there were there 4 different colors? Red, blue, black. That's it. 3 colors. Red, blue, and black are the 3 colors. And then animals, we have owls, lions, foxes. Owls, lions, foxes. Seems like there was one more, wasn't there? No, I guess only 3 animals and 3 colors. Owls, lions, and foxes. Red, blue, and black. Owls, lions, and foxes. Okay. A parable, a moral lesson. A king has sent his 7 sons to seek their fortune, can only be at peace once they have all claimed their place in the world. Okay, let's look at our rules here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So we've got 3, we've got 6. This looked like the 6 player, the 4 players, each of which has 6 tokens, but really there's 7. So, okay, look what it is. Each player has their tokens behind them and their cards, and then their 7th token is on the board here with the stack of cards not dealt out. So it looks like everyone gets 2 cards. Then the stack of cards goes in the center. Oops. Stack of cards goes in the center. And then what's happening are they're playing a card from their hand onto the table in this arrangement and putting their token on it. So we're building, this is sort of setup and building this playing board out of cards. And then you put your token on a card, maybe to claim it. And it looks like you have to build the rest of the board. Okay, and then this looks like various things you can do, perhaps. Day and night. There is a discussion here about what do players do during their turn, and then what do players do at the end of their turn. So this looks like during your turn, you either do this or you do this, claim the woman, and then at the end, you take you refresh your hand from the deck, from the draw deck, it looks like. Either you refresh your hand or you take one card. So this is the turn structure. You take your turn, you either take a card or you do this, whatever this is. And at the end of your turn, you draw a new card. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So this is legal, this is not legal, this is not legal. Let's look at this more closely. So you can't take a card if it matches the animal in front of you or something, and you can't take a card if it matches the color in front of you, or whatever this means. You can take a card if it's different color and different animal. That's the claiming thing here. Okay. So where is the card? Oh, is that what it is? You put your token on a card to mark that's your animal and color, and then you can claim it if it's different in color and animal, something like that. Now, what's this showing? Boy, that's a weird one, huh? This turns into this. Are you trying to build a row of 4 in your color? That's a tricky one. Let's come back to that in a second. Oh, that's it, huh? Okay. So we have setup. Looks like you've got 2 cards face down. Each player gets 2 cards face down. A draw deck goes in the center. We put out 4 cards. Everyone's token goes on 1 card. Either they get claimed or they just go out in this order. And then what? This feels like it's the general way you play a turn. You either take a card or you rest. And at the end of your turn, you draw a card. Something like that. Here's the rule for claiming cards. And then this is maybe the rule for placing cards. Is something happening? Like, are they turning this card into their own because they're surrounding these purples with reds to turn them all red? That's weird. And then what is this? Like, this is clearly the card. The card you take a card. The card you take has to be different in color and animal from what? From what is it compared? Where is this symbol coming from? And is this playing a card instead of taking a card? Is this saying you have to play a card? Is that what you're doing? Okay. So it would make sense that on your turn, you're placing a card out. And the placement rule, so if it's blue's turn, blue can place a card in one of these spots that's dotted. You could place a card or you could rest. Maybe only when you rest do you draw cards. When you place a card, what is it saying? You can't be next to? Is that what it's saying? So when you place this card, you can't be next to an animal of the same color or shape? then you put your token on it. So as you play out, now this board has to get bigger than this, surely. So you place your thing, then you put your token on it. Maybe when you put your token, you get to convert these purples to your discs. 4 in a row, but where is that 4 in a row from? Like here we have 4 in a row. Here we don't have ever 4 in a row. So how does that make, I mean, I guess we have 4 in a row here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but how do you get a bigger grid? Boy, this one feels pretty ambiguous. Well, let's see what the chat has to say. What's the symbol at the top right? Any ideas? This does look like rest or pass. You can convert colors of previously played cards by surrounding them with other colors. Surrounding? Or I don't know if surrounding is the right word. We've just been shown cards in a row. Card position rules and then the token conversion rules. Every card you play, you put your token on top. I think that makes sense. You just keep extending the grid. Okay, so it's a little weird though, but so if we look at the rules again, it says can only be at peace once they have all claimed their place in the world. So I think, here's how I'm reading this. You're taking your turn, you're placing a card, you're putting your token on it, and you can convert tokens to your color. So the first player that gets all of their tokens spent wins. That's how I'm reading the story. So when we build this grid, on your turn, you can place a card and a token, but you can also convert other players' tokens to yours. So you could conceivably win early in less than 7 turns by converting someone else's tokens to yours. I do think every time you play a card, you put a token on it. So for sure, in 7 turns, it's going to be over. And this would suggest that this has got to be allowed to be bigger than this. Maybe when you place a card, it has to be adjacent to another card orthogonally. But so once this card is, so if these are the 4 cards that are placed, here are the allowable spots. But once this spot is filled, this will become available and this will become available. Once this spot is filled, this will become available. Okay, so that's why we're only being shown this diamond. Here are the current legal moves. But once these fill out, these other moves become available. Okay, so on your turn, you place a card and put your token, or you pass. And then at the end of the turn, you draw a new card. All right, when you place a card, are we looking at, so this rule seems to suggest that it's only what you're next to that you flip, but maybe it's in both directions. What do we think this rule is now? This placement rule says you can't place a red next to another red. You can't paste a lion next to another lion. I guess that's just the orthogonal rules. So probably what it's saying is, okay, let's get it out here. Okay, so we start with the draw deck in the center. Everyone gets 2 cards. Let's start this off. Can we try a 2-player game? Does it work? Let's try a 2-player game, red and blue. Okay, if we imagine that red goes first. So here's our turn. Red is dealt 2 initial cards at setup. He can look at his cards. He can play one, putting his token on it. Maybe these 4 start out. Probably not. Nothing starts played. Then blue goes. Blue could go here, 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 or here, or here. But we're thinking blue is not allowed to go here because that's a matching thing. But blue could go here because this is not a matching color or animal. Now, what's interesting here is that if blue had a card to put here, that would be a good incentive to do this. But blue is taking a risk that red might have a card to put here. So do we think now at the end of red's turn they would have drawn, and now at the end of blue's turn he draws. Now red draws, and he kind of wants to play here. So let's see, can he play there? He could play this card here. If red does that, it would put a thing here, and then by the flip rules would turn this to red. Now it's blue's turn. Blue couldn't go here, or here with this card, or here, because it's all red on the left. But blue could go here, and then draw up. Red goes. Okay, well, red can go here and claim this. Flip this blue to red. So far, red seems a little easy to place a card. So blue can't go here. Could go here if he wants to try to flip all of these over. Draw a card, but as long as red can go and place here, can't do this, but could do this. So looks like red's going to win this game fairly easily. Maybe blue should stop trying to get onto here. Do you think maybe... So that gives us the basics of a game. A little bit of the reverse side Othello rules for flipping. Probably you could flip any orthogonal. I suppose the only question I'm not 100% clear on is, do you always draw a card at the end of your turn? Probably. But maybe you do this until you pass, and then you draw a card. Then you draw 2 cards. So do we think every turn you play a card or pass and then draw a card? Or is it that this is the end of the round, and so every player either plays a card or passes, and only when you pass you draw a card? Let's see what the chat thinks. Okay, it's like Othello, surround other colors with your own to turn them into your own color. Start with 2 cards in hand. Place the card that doesn't match the surrounding cards. Claim it and any enclosed others. And turn. Does the middle mean the rules for replacing a previously played card? I don't think you can ever replace a previously played card. I think the 4 starting cards are part of the setup. Valley says, I agree. Anik says, yes, I think so, based on the starting image. And I think you either play a card, and if you can't, you pass, and then you end your turn by drawing a card. Are you allowed to rotate your cards? Valley says, yes, I think so. No, surely not. Valley says, I think you either play or pass and then draw a card. Always draw a card at the end of your turn. So it's just a pass, meaning I don't want to play or I can't play. Okay, you clearly can't rotate for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's too easy to place cards. So I don't know, there would be no reason you would allow people to rotate, and there's no example of a rotated card. So I don't think there's any sign that you can rotate, and there's no sign that you can replace a card. You're always putting new cards. I do think you have a compelling case to be made that there's a starting setup. A starting random setup. It makes sense. That would maybe avoid a little bit of this degenerate case where you're just playing in a line. I think that makes sense. So, in the beginning of the game, we're saying that the random setup has the grid initialized randomly. And maybe you take turns, or maybe this is the exact setup. Now, you have to remember, this might not be a 4-player game, so I think you might, I guess that would be a reason to not think of this as the fixed setup. But probably it is. Probably if you were having a 2-player game, it would just start like this. Or a 3-player game like this, and a 4-player game like this. I guess that would be my guess. Although I guess you could argue different setups for different number of players, and this is just a 4-player setup. But okay, if this is our initial setup like this, everyone gets 2 cards. And then on your turn, probably going clockwise, you place a card. This would be illegal because of blue and blue. This would be legal. Different animal, different color, different animal, and different color. This would be illegal. So, but then this would be illegal, 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 illegal. This would be legal for blue. So blue could go here, blue could go here. Now, do we think there's any reason to think you could only go next to yourself? No, not really. The only legal rules is it has to match the animals. All right, I think we've got it. I think we've got it. Shall we look at the questions again and see if there's anything we don't think we understand the rules to? What does the initial setup look like? Okay, we just looked at the initial setup. What are the things a player can do during their turn? It looks like they just place a card or pass. And then they draw up. Place a card or pass. Does the game support both orthogonal and diagonal play? No, we claim that you can only go orthogonally. No, they cannot be placed upside down. I would bet on that. What's the main restriction during gameplay? Okay, the main restriction is that the cards you place, the animals can't be this. Two animals can't touch of the same animal or the same color. They have to be different in type and color. What do players do at the end of their turn? They draw a card. How does the main form of player interaction work? Okay, well, we said if you're on a line with someone and you surround, if you place a card that surrounds someone, you flip their tokens to yours. The basic Othello rules, I guess. How does the main form of player interaction, and when is the winner determined? Okay, the winner is the first player who gets all of their tokens out on the board. There you go. I think we've got good theory for this game, answering all the questions. I'm not sure we need to take any hints. Is there any question here that you'd like a hint on? I don't feel like we need any hints. I think we're ready to go. Looks like the chat is a little bit wanting to say you could play cards upside down, but I am convinced that it's too easy to play a card. So there'd be no reason to let people flip cards upside down and rotate them. Any other theories? You could argue, is there a maximum hand size? I don't think so. So if you have two cards and you pass, then you get 3 cards in your hand. I don't see any reason not to do that. You're taking a penalty for not playing a card to give yourself some more options. So I don't see any reason why you should have a hand limit. No sign that you can replace cards, just build them. No sign that you can go diagonally. Is there any reason to think that this shows us the legal plays after the setup. So I think we've got the orthogonal rules. It just has to be orthogonal to one other card, can't play diagonally. I don't see any reason to think that there's a limit to the size of this grid. If you've got 4 players with 7 tokens, you could conceivably have a game that takes 28 turns, which would be bigger than a 5x4 grid. So you'd have to let this grid be allowed to be bigger. Okay, I think we've got it then. And are we in agreement that this is just a general case of surrounding tokens? Like you could surround them vertically, you'd still get the flip. And I think, there is an issue with the reverse Othello. Like you could end up flipping this card from purple to red by going this way. And when you did that, that would not trigger this to turn red. It's only if the card you place actively surrounds the opponent's tokens do you get them, not chain reactions. All right. I think we've got it. Is there any question? There's nothing in the rules forbid rotated cards, but I agree it would probably be too easy. All right, any other? It sounds like everyone agrees we're not going to spend a single hint, and now we're going to look up the rules and see how we did. All right, here we go. Site number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. Okay. Try to get this on screen, huh? All right, here we go. Where is our... All right, site 6. What does the initial setup look like? We argue it's exactly like this. Does someone want to make a guess about what a 3-player setup would look like? And it makes sense that you have to have this initial setup. And it looks like it's clockwise, right? Whatever the first player is, and then yellow goes, and purple and red. So it looks like you have to do this. All right, but I think you could play a 3-player game and you just do the first 3 colors. Each player is dealt 2 cards and distributes 7 discs of the same color to each player. Place the remaining cards in a deck face down at the center of the table. Okay, so we got that one correct. Doesn't say... Draw 1 card from the deck for each player and place them face up on an adjacent side of the central deck. Okay, so that's what we said as well. In turn order, each player chooses a different face-up card to place one of their discs on it. Okay, so that's a little subtlety that we considered, but we thought that it was assigning you an order, but that's a little bit misleading because this fairly clearly is going in clockwise order, placing the discs. If it wanted to say you could pick arbitrarily, it should have shown in this example, like blue was over here, yellow was here, red was here. So I'm not going to deduct any points from us for this, but it's saying in the official rules, the players in turn order can choose which of these 4 cards to go on. Okay, but I'm giving us a perfect 3 for that. What can a player do on their turn? Okay, a player can place a face-up card and disc at a legal position adjacent to another card on the board, or can do nothing and pass their turn. Okay, so we were right about that. We were right about what the reclining lady means, or the reclining prince, perhaps. Does the game support orthogonal and diagonal play? No, only orthogonal. All right, we concluded that as well. Not much to that. Next question. What is the main restriction during gameplay? Okay, we said you can't be adjacent to the same animal, shape, or color. You are allowed to play a card only as long as both of its god spaces are not adjacent to a matching color or god. Okay, so we got question 4, perfect. What do players do at the end of their turn? Okay, this was draw a card. Draw a card from the deck. Okay, so that's another 3. How does the main form of player interaction work? This is the flipping cards if you surround them. If there's ever any number of enemy discs in between 2 of your discs, the enemy discs are automatically converted to your own. Okay, so this rule seems to suggest that you could have chain reactions. It's not just the card token you pick. The only exception is enemy discs cannot be converted if the deck is also in between your capturing discs. I guess that makes sense. We didn't even consider that possibility. Okay, I'm going to give us our full points for that. I don't think there's any reason to prefer the chain reactions to the non-chain reactions. When is a winner determined? The first player to place all 7 of their discs on the board is declared the winner. And that's it. So that's our 21 points perfect. And played in about 37 minutes. Any reason to deduct any points? Valley says it seems it's only when exactly 2 discs. No, that's not saying anything. It's just saying when it's between your discs. When you have any pair of discs that have people in between it. You flip their discs. I suppose if I would think that what's the rule in Othello? I think in Othello it doesn't chain react, does it? Like if you make a line and you turn a line black, do you also then capture anything horizontally to the left or back? I thought it only works. I thought it didn't chain react, but maybe this seems to suggest it does chain react. I'm not sure. I wish I could. Does anyone remember what the real rules in Othello are? Will it chain react? You know what I mean, right? I mean, I still think that we should get full points for that, but you could argue that that was a little detail. Would be more likely to work in Othello. Okay, Gemini says, a single disc can outflank multiple lines of the opponent's pieces simultaneously, flipping a row and a diagonal for Othello. Yeah, that's not really what I'm asking. Let me just show you what I'm trying to say. So, if you had a situation like this, okay. So here's what I'm saying. I'm trying to remember the rule. If I placed here, then I shift these to red, for sure. But then the question is, does this one get flipped? Because now it's surrounded. The rules of this game say yes. The rule of, at least that one line rule of this game says as soon as this one flips to a red, by putting this here, this one would also flip. But my memory of Othello is that this wouldn't flip because the disc I just placed was this one, and it's only things this triggered. So this would trigger this. If I place this here, this would trigger this and this to turn all red, but not this. And the rules for this game seem to suggest that this would trigger also, because it says as soon as you're surrounded. If there is ever, it would flip. So in this game, this would flip. But I think in Othello, it wouldn't. And it sounds like Nelson and Rob are confirming my memory that Othello does not chain and react, which means if you had to guess the rules for this game, given that it was completely ambiguous, and given this little diagram here that shows actively placing a card, triggering it, I think it would be more logical to go by the Othello rules of no chain reaction. So we should get a bonus point for being more correct than the archaeologists who discovered this game, who I think made a slight mistake about that rule. Once again, a perfect score. We even conserved a hint for use on our next game. I mean, fun stuff. This might have been the first game that we didn't have a big aha moment, but we did a little bit in terms of, like, do you place a card? Do you take a card? At first, I thought you were taking cards. And then there was this question of, like, what does this mean? Like, what is this in reference to? It was clear it was not. It was telling you can't do the same animal or color. It wasn't clear, but then when it all came together, building the grid, it all made sense. Still a brilliant little game. But they do not feel like they're getting harder. They do not feel like these archaeological sites are getting harder. We have 4 more left. Surely they will get a little bit harder at some point. We've just found the puzzle game for us. I think the aha moment was realizing the token goes on top of the played card. Fun stuff. All right, well, thank you for joining me for another fun session of Unboxed. 4 more left. I'm almost sad that we're coming to the end of this, at least past the halfway point. I hope they make more of these. Any final thoughts from the channel? Anyone got any plans today? I'll see some of you tomorrow for the next Letters from a Ghost Hunter. Anything else to talk about before we sign off here? Which game did you like better, this one or Site 6 or Site 5? Where would you rank these? I guess among all of the sites, these last two might have been some of the easier ones. Felt like these last two were some of the easier ones we played. Rob says Site 5 was better than Site 6. I guess the longer they take, the better. That's the metric. If they take longer for us to discuss and figure out, they're more enjoyable. I'm still amazed that these are all actual little games. Like, you could absolutely see playing these little games. And I love how, you know, we complain about rule books, like a 20-page rule book, and ambiguities. I just love the nature of this puzzle, that somehow the complete rules of this game are describable here. Because of our domain knowledge of what makes a good game and what games are similar to other games, this is enough to tell us that you draw a card at the end of the round. I just think that's brilliant. I want a site we can't figure out. Then go buy City of Six Moons. I mean, we could figure out City of Six Moons, but City of Six Moons is like the advanced version of this. If you like this idea, if you're enraptured as I am with the concept of this game, go check out City of Six Moons. And I think this is a genre ripe for more development. If someone is considering making a board game, making a puzzle game, I think this is a great area to see more of. All the games that we figured out here on these sites are replayable. They don't look like they're amazing games, but they do look reasonable. All right, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.